as a group of individuals or as a small community.
It's almost 30 years since prominent SNP activist and lawyer Willie McRae was found unconscious and bleeding in a remote glen in Wester Ross. His car had left the road at speed and careered down the side of a hill. Initially it looked like a tragic accident, but it soon became apparent something else had happened. McRae had a bullet wound to his head. He never regained consciousness and died the following day. Controversy remains over whether McRae took his own life or was murdered by unknown assailants. His story has inspired a new play that will be premiered at this year's Edinburgh Fringe and is written by poet and playwright George Gunn. Director Libby MacArthur told Bellavision that the new play deals with wider issues in society.
Well, more than what it's about, for me 3,000 Trees is just a beautiful piece of work. You know, it's not an accident that George has written a poem, you know, and it really is like all the other work that George has written. It sings off the page, it speaks of something much bigger and greater and wider and deeper than an incident. So for me, it's about, like every good artist, it's about love, really, essentially. It's about a better way of being. For me, it's about, I mean, I'm on purpose not telling you anything about what actually happens in the piece, because to a certain extent, I think that that's a bit like talking about, you know, what kind of hat someone's wearing or what coat they're wearing. And for me, it's about who they are. So George has written something that if you were to look at the circumstances and the events of the play, you might conclude that this is a really depressing bit of work, because it's about, you know, injustice, and it's about a kind of, you know, it's a crime drama because there's murder in it, and you know, we'd like to always think that folk would agree with us when we say murder's awful and terrible and sad and brutal and unnecessary. But somehow George has written a piece that's not about someone being murdered. It's actually about something much greater than that, which is just, let's not live like this. You know, let's look for a better way to be. Let's look for, you know, and it's like all the way through the piece, you can just see the gold thread that he weaves. You know, he's such a gifted man. So, you know, as a storyteller myself, when I read something like that, it's just a thrill, because it seeps up. The subtext just seeps up through every bit of writing, you know. So it's very exciting.
Producer Mark MacNicol stresses the play isn't a docudrama about Willie McRae's life and death, although the comparisons will be clear to those who know the story. Instead, the play deals with much bigger issues.
For me, the play has many themes. You know, there are many different themes that it addresses, but one of them is civil liberties, undoubtedly. We live, you know, that whole area is very zeitgeist at the moment, because we live in the era of the whistleblower, you know. When I read the play, I get a real sense of, you know, there being a big difference between us in 2014 and the people in 1985, for example, because they didn't know what we know. And I personally, you know, speaking for myself, I feel that I have a responsibility to stand up to the direction that things are taking when it comes to the speed with which our civil liberties are being eroded, like right now as we speak.
Since McRae's death, state surveillance has increased dramatically, a theme reflected in 3,000 Trees.
Willie McRae, who the play is inspired by, was a man who, you know, no one disputes the fact that he was routinely followed by special branch. His home and his office were repeatedly broken into, to such an extent that he carried his important documents with him at all times. And, you know, now we're in a situation where everybody's Willie McRae, because all of us are having our sensitive and not so sensitive information monitored on an industrial scale by our governments.
Funding the play has proved a challenge for Mark and fellow producer Adam Robertson. The production has had to find new and innovative ways to make the play a reality.
So the model is an effective one and it works. And essentially all we're doing is we're paying the bills on the back of advanced ticket sales. So similarities could be drawn between what we're doing and the way that Craig White bought Rangers, for example. The only difference being people are actually going to get to see a show in Edinburgh.
George Gunn's 3,000 Trees opens at the Fringe and runs from the 1st of August until the 24th. Tickets are available through the company's website, 3000trees.com.
Before all this started, much like you, did I care about privacy? Civil liberties? I had nothing to hide. Then, well, turns out what I did have was information. The type of information that they wanted to hide.